He asks her why. She tells him she saves specimens. Everybody's doing it. Hasn't he heard of the movement? Hasn't he seen all the buttons and the bumper stickers? Dreamland is dying. The tilt-a-whirl tilts, but won't whirl. Rats infest the tunnel of love. People come out screaming. The horses on the merry-go-round have been put out to stud. And life is a circle, a wheel. It's like being on a merry-go-round, only there's no music, and even the brass ring is a circle. 2 floors below the park, Chinese women sew eyebrows on puppets. And beyond the gate, people live in fear. Rows of monitors in office and apartment buildings show pictures of hallways, staircases, roofs, and garages. Signs on the front lawns of private homes warn of an armed response to an intruder. Car alarms constantly go off. Windows are barred, doors bolted. Guard dogs bark at every passerby and howl at the sirens of police cars. Dr. Ostrowski's favorite way to travel is with no luggage, with just the clothes he's wearing, and an attaché case with bandages, lunch meats, a hurricane lamp, geological survey maps, a selection of Venetian glass beads, litmus paper, and halazone tablets. Last week, Dr. Ostrowski rode on a bus in the middle of the night. He looked out the window at enormous potholes, missing embankments, dead animals, another bus on its back in flames, a huge boulder in the middle of the road rushing up the tunnel of the headlights, a wounded soldier in a ditch, a truck jackknifed against a mule cart, smoking. We are all subject to conflicting tendencies, love and hate, the desire for freedom and the need for dependence, monogamous and polygamous strivings, heterosexual and homosexual impulses, the longing for change and the need for security, the will to power and the will to submission. The human heart is divided against itself. Dr. Ostrowski remembers his most interesting case. She was a woman who was obsessively afraid of becoming pregnant. She refused to take a bath because she feared there might be living sperm cells in the tub, which would enter her. She dreaded sitting on chairs, sofas, and toilet seats because again, she might somehow be contacted by sperm. At night, she was plagued by a recurring nightmare in which she was pursued by millions of little fish. The intriguing twist in this case was the fact that she was a sleepwalker. While she was asleep, she'd get out of bed, put on her gown, leave her apartment, and go down to the red light district of the city, where she'd stand in an alley and offer herself to any passerby. She was also very religious and contemplated suicide because she couldn't achieve complete spiritual concentration. Whenever she went to church and knelt down to pray, she'd look up at Christ's beautiful, almost naked body arched on the cross, and unspeakable fantasies would enter her mind. She'd return home in a highly agitated and aroused state. Finally, her conflict led to a mental breakdown. She was committed to a mental hospital and placed under Dr. Ostrowski's supervision in a ward with a group of schizophrenics, seriously disturbed people with a variety of delusional systems. There were 3 Napoleons, 12 Hitlers, 4 St. Jones, 2 Rothschilds, 6 Cinderellas, and 9 Christs. As Dr. Ostrowski predicted, she fell in love with the Christs and became mistress to them all. Eventually, she became pregnant and gave birth to a pair of identical twins, one of whom eventually became a prostitute, while the other became a nun. Yesterday, at a coffee shop, Dr. Ostrowski began trembling. He was intrigued by the way his teeth chattered whenever he lightly closed his jaw. He liked the feeling. He tried to hold it just right so that the clicking would be distinct. Then he felt the urge to scream and thought how nice it would feel to have a seizure, his body buffeted by spasms and convulsions, until he'd crumple peacefully to the floor, his arms and legs twisted grotesquely, looking like a smashed doll. fact said that the East and West are both whores. But the East is pregnant.
Mythology, of course, there's the story of Saturn, for example, who holds Cassiopeia hostage in hell for 350,000 years. Now, this is a long captivity, of course, but for the gods, this was really rather normal. Cassiopeia, of course, was famous for walking nude through Mount Olympus every morning at sunset. And Saturn, who of course is the god of the underworld, the god of darkness, and so on, takes Cassiopeia and takes her down with him to the underworld, where she is enclosed in a number of concentric rings, and each year of 350,000 years, a smaller ring is put around her until finally Cassiopeia becomes so thin and emaciated that she cannot move, and of course eventually she turns into a tree and
that's
blossoms.
why trees have rings.
Exactly. That's what the rings and the stumps of trees that you see, of course, are based on this legend.
Yes.
Well, why was she walking around nude? It seems that she was really asking for a problem there.
Well, no. As a matter of fact, it was a little. The myth is a little more complicated than that, because it turns out that Mercury, before this experience took place, has taken Cassiopeia's all her belongings and decided to wear them himself. So Mercury, in a sense, was really the first. He is the god of transvestites. If you've ever noticed, Mercury is always presented with a very interesting. He has those little boots with the very much like the disco outfits that you see now. He wears a small little World War I German steel pith helmet and a G-string.
And punk shoes with wings on them.
With wings on them, exactly.
The making of a record album can be a great party, with the highest class restaurants being called to deliver expensive French food and Greek delicacies. And unlike the movies, where alcohol is anathema, in the movies and in television, the kiss of death is to be known as a drunk. In the recording industry, you can drink and take drugs as long as you can play. And often those who are ancillary to the group, the producer's assistants, the publicist, the privileged gophers, the boyfriends and the girlfriends of the performers, get very high and stoned. And you begin to get a feeling for the enormous wastefulness of it all, the tremendously decadent quality that this all represents, that these people are feasting upon and wasting the hard-earned money of the public, who will be purchasing this music and feeding them excessive amounts of profit. But what I'd like to talk about now is the most shocking story of a recording session I have ever heard, a story that was apparently suppressed so that only a few people in the business know about it. What I'm referring to is a session of a new wave group that took place in a big rock and roll studio in Southern California a few years ago. The producer from the record company had contracted for it, and he'd put a bunch of money in escrow, because it is well known that things are often broken or stolen during sessions, and the studio had handled punk groups before, and knew about the doorman getting punched in the face, and about the guy who'd get sick in the hallway, and about the peculiar needs of musicians, some of whom would insist on strict dietary regimens, which would involve sometimes cooking in the studio or bringing in one case, a live goat, because the artist was on a fresh goat milk diet and also used it for her skin. Every 4 hours she'd have somebody milk the goat where they kept it in the bathroom with straw on the floor. And the band members would bring their dogs and friends, and there'd be a 3-hour telephone call to Guam and 6 pounds of beluga caviar from Ziti's, all charged to the studio, of course. And just outside, barely under control, a huge crowd of breastfeeding, weeping, shrieking fans, as well as angry creditors, processing agents, out-of-town policemen, outraged ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends, attorneys pressing paternity suits, celebrity sycophants, and autograph seekers. So this particular recording session began with a series of mishaps. The first 15 or 20 minutes, of course, consisted of people retiring to different places to snort up lines of cocaine. Then the arranger walked through the studio. It was pretty crowded with instruments and paraphernalia, and he turned around abruptly, and a boom kind of wheeled over and in slow motion, to everyone's horror, fell through the glass partition separating the control room from the studio, smashing it to bits and pieces, making a huge mess. And a kind of Rube Goldberg-esque thing took place because, as the boom was falling over, the bass player lunged for it, not realizing that his bass guitar was still plugged into the amplifier, and the cord from the amplifier to the bass stretched and pulled the amplifier over, and it fell face down, barely missing the bass player himself, who was entangled in the wire that he was attached to, kind of pinned there. And his girlfriend attempted to pull the bass strap off of him, and in the process knocked over yet another boom that fell into the trap drum set. At which point a crush of adoring fans and outraged figures from the past of the group broke through the security guards and police and grabbed instruments and various other items as keepsakes until they were driven back and some semblance of order was restored. The next few hours went smoothly. The band succeeded in recording some tracks of a new song. But then, during a break, the lead guitarist, who was drinking a large Coke, put the Coke down on top of his amplifier, turned around to look at the bass player, knocked the Coke over, it spilled, and there was a blinding flash, and his face pulled into a hideous grimace, his hair standing on end, his eyeballs crossing and uncrossing involuntarily, and he died spasmodically twitching his way into eternal darkness. He was electrocuted because he wasn't using a grounded system, and the liquid had spilled over him as he was resting his hand on another electrical instrument, and the ground potential was just too much. Now you have to understand that there were heavy contractual obligations here, and this was the sort of group that could put out a record and their record would be sold without having to go on tour. So they decided they would substitute for him and provide a synthesized guitar track and a vocal impressionist who would do him, and they brought this impressionist in. The purpose being to report his death only after the session had been completed, assuming that the album would then sell even more copies because it would be merchandised as his last album before dying. Now the group's drummer was a Samoan. He had a number of his friends there, and they had, because this rock group was so famous, walked through customs with the group and hadn't been vaccinated, and had brought with them a skin disease that everyone got, and for which, even though the Rockefeller Institute for Tropical Medicine was called in to look at them, they could find no answer. And it was decided that a Samoan practitioner of dermatological folk art would be brought in, herbs, pharmaceuticals, ointments, bombs of the local type, and his arrival brought the dreaded disease of anthrax. And within 2 hours, everyone was dead. The place had to be bricked up. First, the cordon sanitaire was thrown around the building, troops shoulder to shoulder, bayonets bristling, while the hideous necro-fanatic crowds of ghoulish thrill-seekers pressed onto the site of the tragedy. And because of the enormous mob action, and because daily people were breaching the barricades, and the building's very integrity was threatened, and were just a few bricks to be removed, the deadly anthrax would infect the entire city within hours, and everyone would be dead, it was decided to send in some chemical biological warfare experts who would neutralize the anthrax. And these CBW people knew that if they were to fail, the only thing that would save the situation would be an intense blast of heat to cauterize were the skin of the building broken. And so, through a series of underground tunnels, they dug closer and closer to their goal, until they burrowed into the now ghastly disease-reduced building, every surface covered thickly with scummy, sticky, spongy, dreadful bacterial life, as though a petri dish gone mad had been blown 50,000 times up. and the men in the CBW rescue team wore spacesuits. As they entered, they carried their own completely double-isolated, non-infected environment with them. And the first man was set upon by a deranged survivor of the event, his mask torn from his face, and the hideous, slimy, dissolved remains of a human being, bacteria-like, osmosed him. And he was lost. In a flash of napalm, they both were destroyed, and the two remaining CBW men advanced on and into the dimly lit vestibule. They were equipped with super-sensitive missile apparatus, so that the slightest creak caused them to turn, their blowtorches blazing, and a doorway would fall, a room would be incinerated instantly, and a ball of white light would lick out from the area in which they'd blown their napalm. And wearing their fire-protective suits, they moved onward until they reached the central disease location, ground zero for the disease, where they found that everything in the room, whether it was made of metal, glass, plastic, or the remains of human beings, was encased in a kind of pulsating, glowing, mossy, rippling, jelly-like substance that seemed in a kind of predator-intelligent way to sense their arrival, and to move towards them in an osmotic advance, and to pull them in, as it were, and make them part of the greater whole. And these men knew that the moment was lost, and they detonated the small tactical nuclear device which they carried with them, and the entire south side of the city in which this event took place was destroyed. Everyone was vaporized, and upwards of 200,000 people died in a matter of 14 or 15 seconds. This story has never been told.
Now, the demands made in exchange for me were many. They were political, they were monetary. And it was fascinating to me to notice that I was worth $50,000 to my government, but not $100,000.
That's very interesting, because I kept insisting that they up the demands for me. I felt very insulted at first.
Well, at least there were negotiations there, perhaps. My situation with my father holding me because he wanted to marry a certain woman. My father was a bit senile. I found out after 3 months in captivity, he hadn't even managed to contact the woman and inform her of his demands.
And the whole look of the hostage has been co-opted by the society. I pick up Vogue magazine now, and I see myself, so to speak, coming and going.
Hostage chic.
Yes.
That's right.
Well, I've never concerned myself with fashion. I guess I'm old-fashioned. To me, you're a hostage or you're not a hostage, and I know a lot of people want to be hostages or not, but the whole fashion game is something I'm not interested in, you know?
Yes, of course, one of the problems with hostages is that because of your captivity, you're not allowed to go out shopping, and either you must wear the same clothes. Usually you don't know you're going to be a hostage. Lately, of course, now there are hostage kits you can buy with changeable clothes and reversible jackets and the like, but of course in the before the hostage paraphernalia industry grew so big, you weren't allowed to pack a suitcase. You weren't allowed to take a clean change of underwear.
But of course, you know, the heavy-duty hostages are the trendsetters themselves, so they don't have to worry, you know, where they go shopping. They actually set the fashion tone for the rest of it.
One of the major items of hostage fashion, you notice the bandana around my neck. It's a very important item in hostage wear because it doubles as a blindfold and a gag. And, you know, this is something that's been severely co-opted by the outside world. Everybody's wearing them.
I'm afraid what we're going to see next is a whole rash of people coming up with incredible torture stories, very bizarre torture stories, because there's nothing really left to do.
Well, it's the easiest thing to feign in the world. I mean, what's to stop somebody in the suburbs from just saying, well, I was a hostage once, and getting away with it? The masses of people don't really know the difference. They can't tell what's authentic.
There are, of course, have you heard in California, there are some hostage communities now in which people assume the roles of hostages, straight middle-class people, much as ourselves, pay an inordinate amount of money to go to some retreat in the mountains on the west coast, in which they are humiliated, sometimes tortured, tied up, bound, blindfolded, and in some cases executed.
I even understand that in Southern California, there is a new organization called the Church of Humility and Degradation, in which hostage worship has been introduced.
Well, this is not new. This has been active for many, many years.
Hostage worship. How does that work?
Volunteers are selected and martyred and canonized and worshipped. A lot of the laws in this area are yet to be written, and I myself am taking a law correspondence course.
The lawyers always get the money.
Yes, the money, and they shape they are the shape of things to come.
Of course, I wouldn't be surprised if the next step that is taken will be the holding of lawyers as hostages.
Let me interject here. Out of my experience in law school correspondence course, I find that the real complicated aspect of hostage law is that in most cases the captors have laws of their own. For instance, a man named Pirelli was taken hostage by a group known as Torah, which is tough Orthodox rabbis and Hasidim. And Mr. Pirelli was a converted Reformed Jew, and according to civil law, he is legally a Jew. And according to Torah, he was not legally a Jew, and as such was disgraced, was forced to take a ritual bath in filthy, impregnated water, and at the end of the time converted to Shintoism. Now, the question is, Mr. Pirelli brought suit against Torah, but Torah claimed precedence on the basis of Talmudic and Pentateuch law.
White House.
This is Joe Frank calling from KCRW in Los Angeles.
Yes.
I was wondering, would it be possible to talk to the president now?
Sir, I'm sorry. The president is not available for telephone calls without a prior appointment.
I see. Well, we had been hoping that he'd be coming live on the air this evening. We had invited the president of France, Germany, the Soviet Union, and Argentina this evening, and apparently nobody's showed up. And I have 5 minutes left in the program, and you don't think that the president might just take a moment to just give me a few minutes of his time?
I'm sorry, sir. Just a moment.
So you're from Guam. You're a Yako person.
Yes, I am.
Well, you don't mind if I just sort of tap on you for a moment, do you?
No, of course not. If you'd like to go in here. Here, touch me.
My God, you really are hard.
May I help you?
Yes, I would like to talk to the president, please.
The president's not available.
Wears the prismatic
available.
chainmail of
Is there
lush
anybody else who would
tropical
talk
fish skin.
to
Her
me? This is
body
Joe
seems
Frank
to be the
calling from
chromatic
KCRW
mirror
Los
of
Angeles.
love's
I have just a
light.
few more minutes
Like
on
water, the
my
garment
program.
flows and
hope to
eddies,
have the
shifting
great
harmoniously with the
this evening.
graceful architecture of her
that, the
body in
president might
motion.
talk to me
A
just-
modest sea green
just for a
spider's
moment, or
web
somebody
shawl
else,
appears to float about her
Now, there's no one
shoulders.
here at this
Her
time,
face is
sir.
unveiled.
I see.
Her brow offset by a
Well, what's it like in Washington?
brilliant
I
white
can't talk to
pearl.
you, sir.
If the sea is the mother of all
Thank you
life,
very much.
surely this bride
Good
is
night.
the dream wife of all birds. She looks radiant. Like boots of the most buttery Spanish leather, the scaled ankles of Mr. Robin above his talons had been buffed to a rich deepness, each claw burnished and shaped. He is wearing a great cloak formed entirely of hummingbird feathers. A gold inlaid clasp was in the brilliant garment in luxurious folds about his shoulders.
All right, well,
This was ancient, said to come from
this is the sweetmeat popular at the time of Bogman.
eagles
From the pectoral hairs of the local mudwort. As I promised earlier, we're going to eat
luxurious
some of it.
foulard woven of silk and
actually, I'm
cashmere,
gonna eat some of it.
hand painted
No one
as in
else is
the
willing
ancient
to.
days with propitious signs
Some
and
of it-
symbols.
some of it
The
in-
collar,
into my mouth.
severe and
Taste of
high,
this,
blindingly
very
white,
ancient
and
dish going
starched
back
to a metallic
100,000 years.
stiffness, stands at attention beneath the richly feathered neck and polished beak. His eyes are preened and plucked, his hair a study of casual elegance.
Well, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
Hello, this is El Queso Grande speaking. It's about time you called. I was really getting worried sick. This is about work or sex. Well, leave a number. I'm willing to listen to any ideas, but no promises. If it's money you want, just forget it. Hang up now.